Good afternoon. You're here with Mesa County Compass this afternoon on a Sunday afternoon, about the only time we could get together. We are interviewing today Randall Reitz, who is a city council person. And welcome, Randall, and give us a little bit of background about yourself, please.
Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here. Yeah, so I've been on city council for 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed about 90% of it.
Okay.
Mostly been a good experience. I've lived in Grand Junction for 24 years. Okay. Married my wife here. We've had 3 kids. 2 are in college, and 1 is a senior at Palisade.
Oh, my. Okay.
And I've worked at St. Mary's and within the SCL health system since I moved here in 2000.
Tell us a little bit about, you have private practice, and I saw that you help intern people in the medical profession, but you also have a private practice within Intermountain Health as well?
So I work at the Family Medicine Residency Clinic, where we train family doctors. So they've all been through medical school, and they choose their specialty. And so ours choose family medicine for their specialty. And then they join us for 3 years, and we have 9 each year, so 27 total. And so I see all my patients within the St. Mary's system.
Okay.
And then we also train family therapists and social workers as part of our system.
Okay.
Very good.
So what made you run for city council?
Oh, a couple of things. We moved right downtown. I live next to Enstrom's. And just kind of being in the thick of the community, seeing all the hustle bustle really got me interested. I had planned to run for school board before I ran for city council, and had been going to a bunch of district committees and things, and had always volunteered in my kids' schools. And then had some friends who approached me saying, well, I know you're thinking about school board, but would you consider a city council instead? And I took them up on it. So.
Yeah. Equal time for both. I mean,
equal time
30
and equal
hours
pay.
a week. No, yeah.
About.
Well,
you get a
more
little
pay.
bit more city council, but
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think we get like $1 an hour.
Oh, good. Well, that, and Cody doesn't think that's as much as you deserve. So,
Yeah.
So I guess there you were in the thick of things, and you decided that you wanted to run for city council. Was there anything specifically that you wanted to achieve? Because we've had Scott on, we've had Cody on, and we've had Dennis on, and it all seems like they had different things that they were really hoping they would see out of city council. Did you have anything specifically that you were trying to initiate or trying to make sure that you see that during your tenure?
Yeah, mostly I would say I love Grand Junction. I've lived here for many years, and it's a home to me, and I want it to be the best it can be. I feel like we are moving in a good direction overall, and so one of my goals is to kind of keep us moving in a good direction. Early on, I was really involved with the Recreation Center proposal and ballot measure, and so I was really happy to have that passed at the end of my first year on council. And then I've always worked with the unhoused as part of my work with St. Mary's, and that's an important population for me, trying to figure out how to have them have a reasonable life, but also limit the impact they have on the city. And so trying to find the right balance for that. It's been tricky for sure.
Yeah. And so, like Dennis's, who doesn't seem to get as much. So I want to clear up some things and see if what Dennis has said was true, if it's changing or not. Because one of the things that he had told us when he came to visit was that under Greg Caton, that if the only one that could meet with him was the mayor or the mayor pro temp, and the only one that set the agenda for what city council heard was the mayor or the mayor pro temp. Was that true under Greg?
I would frame it a little bit differently than that.
How would you frame it?
So Greg asked us to meet with them every month, and so I met with him every month for the first 2.5 years I was
Did
on.
he ask Dennis to meet with him, or Cody, or the whole group to meet with him, or just them, or just whoever?
I can't speak to that really. I mean, I'm assuming that I always heard about Dennis and Greg meeting, and so I don't want to contradict what he said for sure. And then with setting the agenda, the convention we have is that there's an agenda committee, which is the mayor and the mayor pro tem, and they meet with the city manager and the city attorney once a week, and they kind of set the agenda as it is. But then any 4 people on council can say, hey, we want this to be on the agenda, and it goes on the agenda. I did that 3 or 4 times before joining the agenda committee.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because as mayor pro temp, you would.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I didn't have a problem with getting things on the agenda before, for sure. as long as I had enough, something that was viewed as reasonable by 3 of my colleagues.
Okay.
And do you think that that's the best way to handle it, or would you, because you do have a new city manager coming in?
Yeah, Mike Bennett.
And is that the best way to handle it, or should all members of because I know that Dennis felt like there were things that he would have liked to have had on the agenda that were not. So do you think that it should be something that everybody gets to be able to, since they're all elected members of city council, that
You should have an equal say.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should all have an equal say, for sure. And just like with Robert's Rules of Order, where you have to have a motion and a second before you vote on it, and having some sort of like way to see, is this reasonable enough to be considered? Whether or not 4 is too high or 3 would be better. I would support 3 as a convention also. I mean, I think it would fill up the agenda if we all said we wanted to bring these 5 things forward this week. Maybe 5 times 7 would be 35 things on the agenda. That'd be quite a bit to manage. And so having some sort of way to manage it. It could be like we each get 1 each week or something like that. But I like having some sort of system just to kind of filter through things a little bit.
That's an interesting thought. I would have thought that it would have been good to have all of you together and each of you take a turn, basically, but prioritize.
Yeah.
That way. So
that everybody feels represented, instead of saying if 4 are on one side and 3 are on the other. You know, if you're part of the 3, you never get to have what you want on the agenda.
That'd be tricky. I supported Dennis 3 or 4 times on getting things on the agenda.
Good. Yeah, I know that he comes across as a little crotchety, but I really think that he is a nice man.
Dennis and I work very well together. We get together at least once every couple months outside of city council and go for lunch and talk about things. And so. Good.
And see, that stuff we don't know.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've really liked that Cody does, and I just happened on your website today, Randall for Grand Junction, because Cody has that Cody for Grand Junction. But the thing I love that Cody does is he does coffee with Cody, and it's twice a week, and I know that's a lot, but do you do anything that's very regular where people can come in and talk to you? Because the problem that I see is if you go to city council meetings, you have 3 minutes and you just sit up there and you can't say anything.
It's all very structured and formal.
Yes. And then when you have a workshop, I can sit there, but I can't say anything.
That's right.
So there's no dialogue between us on a topic. Like, this is very good for me because I get a chance to see what you think and what you say in an extended period of time.
It's different being able to talk to you than it is to just watch you. It's just a whole different concept, and it's easier to understand your thought process.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're asking is, do you have anything set up like that, or
would you set up
like that?
I mean, I would consider that for sure. We have our email addresses are all on the website for the city.
Right, email's not even.
No, I agree with that, but I'll meet with anyone who wants to meet with me, like meeting with you two today.
Yeah,
and so people reach out to me all the time and say, hey, I have a question for you. Can we meet and talk about it? Like some owners of the downtown businesses reached out to me, and so I'm meeting with them next week. You know, I'm very available that way.
But you don't see the value of a specific place at a specific time where people know, hey, he's going to be here at this time, and I can go talk to him.
It could be very valuable for sure. I could see myself doing that. I have not yet.
Okay. We want you to. So we thought we'd just bring that up
right.
here. Okay, Ruth, what else do you have for him?
Oh, I just was curious about the 4th and 5th Street plan, if you will.
Yeah.
Some say debacle, some say yay, hooray, type thing. And just wondering how you really felt about it, how it's working now. There have been several polls put out with various people with various groups. And from what we see, it's quite negative. So I don't know what you're seeing on your side, and would like to have a little dialogue about that.
Yeah, I would say right now it's the most divisive thing that we're addressing right now as a council. That and probably the unhoused situation are both two big hot button issues that are
of course
facing right now. And
So we don't have an disagreement there, other than the cause of it, which was beautification. And it made it. I remember the signs that they had. Operation Foresight.
Right. They actually had an Operation Foresight beauty pageant, and a queen that was in the parade with the governor when they finished it. It was a big celebration for sure. I think what the city did well with Operation Foresight is two things. One, they did a lot of communication about it in advance, very effectively involving people in the community. It wasn't seen as being so much top down. It was kind of from the bottom up a little more. There actually, what I read, maybe I was wrong, but it was that actually the downtown shop owners actually passed their own tax to help pay for it. It wasn't even paid fully. There was no outside funds at all brought into it other than city and county funds and people giving money to it. The other thing I think they did well was once they started, they finished it quickly. It took only a year to do all the construction, so it wasn't down for very long.
Yeah.
Those are, I think, two good things about Operation Foresight. There's also Operation Uplift during my time here, which did very similar things to Colorado Avenue and 7th Street downtown, where they were brought in a little more tighter and more of a meander. And I think people love our downtown, our main street, for those reasons. Well, it's comfortable. You can walk. You can enjoy yourself. And I guess I like the 4th and 5th Street issue because it's a pilot project that's being done over time with trying to figure out what's the right model. And because it allows us to take what people love about Main Street and spread it out a little more, make it more the kind of the standard for all of downtown.
I think the big issue, at least from my perspective, is I used to drive downtown. I don't anymore.
Okay.
Unless it's on Sunday afternoon right after church, I'll go to the post office because I have to get my mail. Other than that, I don't drive downtown anymore because of the downtown restrictions on driving. I feel squeezed like a cow in a squeeze chute, if you will, and I am always constantly watching for somebody to pull out in front of me or somebody to stop in the middle of the road and try to parallel park, which is almost impossible for a lot of people. We did not learn to parallel park. It just was not a thing.
And going reverse in a street's isn't very natural, isn't very safe.
Well, and especially when it's on a one-way street.
Yes.
It makes it...
One way, one lane.
One lane,
Yeah, it's what makes it bad. Well, if it had two lanes, it's a different story. It's a little easier to see what's coming at you and watch what's going on behind you. But this way, you're so busy watching what's going on in front of you, you don't see what's going on the sides of you. And I have seen near misses. Several near misses of people backing out of the streets that are diagonal parking and just coming out in front of you, or people trying to negotiate the parallel parking. So to me, it's not safe at all.
I think of the two things that I would still like to see looked at more, studied more, and maybe corrected are those two things. One is the parallel parking. It's perplexing to me to be the idea of parallel parking almost in the middle of the street.
Right, exactly.
I don't understand that very well, how that's supposed to work. We're getting data from the police about what they're finding about accidents and things like that, and so we'll pay special attention to that. I also am still not sure about how public safety vehicles can get in and out. I think those are two issues that have yet to be resolved. That's why we're still in the middle of the pilot, trying to figure things out. I mean, I support the overall vision of having it be multimodal, having kind of dedicated bike space and having...
But why not do it like you did on First? It's multimodal on First, where it's on the right side and it just goes out. How much of this is actually more about the sustainability and adaptation plan, where we're doing a street diet to limit motor vehicle traffic and to encourage you not to take a car as much?
I can say that's never been brought up in any of our meetings. Definitely speed has been brought up quite a bit, making sure it's a safe downtown.
But was it not safe before? I mean, really, was it not safe? We did a little survey that we'll share with you yesterday, just to bring in. And I'm going to show you what people thought. Go back. And this hasn't been up very long, so...
And who was this sent out to?
It was just sent out randomly to different places on Facebook. Just
Okay.
Yeah, and on Mesa County campus, we did
Yeah.
have it on Compass. We did have it on Stand for the Constitution and on the signal groups that we belong to.
Okay. So kind of a subsample for sure of the community.
Yeah.
Yes.
But a subsample that we don't think you're listening to.
Uh-huh.
You know, one of the groups we don't think you're listening to at all are people our age.
Yeah.
Because, and we'll just go through. So it's not all people our age, just so you know. And anybody was welcome to take it.
Sure.
So what's your level of satisfaction with the new street design? This is highly dissatisfied.
Yeah.
69 responses. Somewhat dissatisfied. That is your group of satisfied people.
Right. Very narrow.
Safety is the main concern for implementing. How safe do you feel? Much less safe. Somewhat less safe.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody here that says much safer.
Right.
And I think that you know how you feel when you're driving down a street. It's hard for you to make that turn on 4th. It's hard to see around some of those. It's hard to squeeze on 5th going to the library. It's just, you can see it's not just our opinion.
Sure.
There's many people that think that.
No, I think about I'm a historian. I love studying history. And so I was studying also about like the Redlands Roundabout.
Uh-huh.
And, back in 2017, 2018,
Right.
CDOT said this is the most dangerous intersection in our community, one of the most dangerous in the state. They'd had 28 accidents in the 5 years before then, 23 with injuries. And they announced the intent to put the roundabout in. There was a lot of pushback on that. I mean, people were painting the windows of their cars, getting shirts, going to the city council meetings, a huge kind of online poll around how bad is this. I've read actually things in the paper about saying the city or CDOT's bringing a elephant gun to a mosquito problem. This is going to put the Redlands drivers in traffic hell for the foreseeable future. They went ahead and did it anyways. And since then, I asked CDOT about the traffic data. There's only been 3 accidents in the last 5 years since then in that intersection, none of which involved injuries. And so I do have a lot of faith in traffic engineers and science. That's going to be, a lot of what's going to guide me is that. And
Not how people feel, and if they don't feel safe driving. That won't guide you.
It will for sure. I mean, I think those all go together. Like we look at like what we call heat maps, which are like where are people feeling the most safe and least safe, based on some surveys, but also about the actual data. And for me, that's going to be really important for sure.
Okay, as long as it's very important. Moving on here.
Yeah.
Then it said, do you agree with the decrease in angle parking in conjunction with newly implemented parallel parking? This is, they agree. Do you agree with the decrease? They don't like it. They disagree.
Right.
87%, because, again, it's too difficult to do that.
And that's probably, like I said before, one aspect which I have the most questions about.
But it's also a decrease in parking, too. By making it parallel instead of the angle parking, you've decreased the amount of parking, too. And again, with 1/4 of the population being older, or even probably a little bit more, if we go to 60, when you start saying, I just need to be a little bit safer in driving, that you're just making it more uncomfortable for those drivers. And, a lot of them are not using that bicycle, and they need to be able to get closer to, if they want to shop, which is the point of going downtown.
There are some places that my eye doctor is downtown on 4th and Main. And it's difficult to get to there. You've also closed off the parking on either side of it behind Rock Slide and behind the old Wells Fargo building. You have to go on Colorado Avenue to access those. Those turns to go onto Colorado Avenue are a nightmare, quite frankly. You can't see, and it's scary down there. And when I were younger, I would say, okay, I've got the right of way. I'm going, regardless. I'm older now, and I know that doesn't always work well. So,
and I'd feel terrible if somebody lost a foot.
Yeah.
Just
Well, I think your point about older adults is a really important one.
Yeah.
That the city, kind of equal access means equal access for everybody.
Right.
And if part of our population is feeling like they're being frozen out of something, that's not a good thing for sure.
Yeah, and I definitely know that several people that are older, that are like in my Bible study, said, I won't go downtown anymore because it just makes me too uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really a shame because that really jeopardizes then the businesses that run downtown. I mean, you've got your good cafes, I mean the fun ones, Rock Slide and you know, a few of those, and then you've got your little boutique shops that depend on people coming down and shopping and looking, and if you look, you buy, you know, type thing. If nobody's there, you freeze those businesses out.
What we do know is that Main Street's never been more healthy than it is right now. That it's almost completely rented out right now. The businesses are doing overall very well. Again, the data would show that Main Street's doing very, very well.
It does, but your leases run yearly.
Right.
This has just happened in the last few months. So what's going to happen when those leases are up? Are people going to walk away?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, that's all part of the data we need to consider in this process, for sure.
And didn't Rockslide say that they've lost quite a bit of business? I think that was in the paper, that Rockslide specifically was on the news and said their business was down.
Yeah. I do know that all the owners of the hotels downtown are big supporters of it. They think that it's been an improvement for the community.
But on that aspect, but not on the homeless situation.
Right.
So
that's another
and they are groups
catch-57.
that's a group that I trust to give me their straight story, because they have been very, very candid with us about the unhoused situation.
Right.
One of the biggest concerned groups. And this one, they were saying, for us, this has been a great change. This is moving in the direction we'd like to see the city go.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Not the direction that people would like to see go necessarily, but the direction that they like the city.
Yeah.
And then this is another one. Do you feel that bicyclists have adequate access to safe travel to the downtown area on adjacent streets other than the main corridor? And 84% said yes. They would feel more comfortable with the adjacent streets being the bicycle streets.
Third and
sixth.
Right,
not fourth and fifth, where you've got a lot of people coming down from Orchard Mesa going to work, going to town. You're losing a lot of your, you know, it's a timing issue too.
Yeah.
And it's also you're using more gas if you're stuck at stoplights or you're congested.
Yeah, I think this isn't a different issue where different groups in the community are speaking about it very differently. You know, I appreciate you getting your survey to your people who are in your circle. When we get feedback from the community, I would say it's much more evenly split on all these issues, coming either at the city council meetings.
Well, that
or
was
emails
going to
we
be
get,
my next,
or people pull me aside in the community. People. Different walks of life are going to view it differently. I appreciate your point about making sure that this fits for everybody,
right?
And that we're not freezing out any one group of population.
Or you're not favoring one group of population because you're making a design that is specifically for one group at the detriment of the other groups who also are users, because the city engaged GJ had 83%. Your main transportation is a motor vehicle. And bicycling is great, but you're not. I'll ask you. Does your family, if you're going to the dentist, you're taking a kid to the dentist, you're a little bit younger then, but so you have to take the child to the dentist.
Right.
Does everybody go ride their bicycle?
We don't, for sure.
No. When you grocery shop and you're doing major grocery shopping, not picking up a couple of items, do you take a car or do you take a bike?
I usually take a bike. You usually take a car.
Yes, you take a car.
I think that the mistake that we've been making for all these years is putting way too much emphasis on car traffic as being the way we build all of our cities. They're based around how can we make these the most accommodating for cars, and which are very important. I mean,
but that's how you transport 83% of the time.
A lot of what we do is that, but it comes at a cost to where everything we do is built around what's going to be the most accommodating for cars. An important consideration, but not the only consideration.
Or you can make a accommodation that is commensurate with the amount of time and the amount of people that utilize that.
Sure.
Don't you think that's more fair?
I think that's why we have bike lanes, but not bike highways, for sure.
Yes.
And so we have, 90% of our streets are very car-centric already. I'm not saying make it 50-50. I'm saying I like having changes, especially in parts of like downtown, where it feels like a bike is welcome. A bike can get around without having to be put in danger.
Then that would make more sense then to go 3rd and 6th Streets rather than your main thoroughfares of 4th and 5th, and keep the bikers safe and still give them a direct path to downtown. Looks to me like it would be the logical thing. That's just my point of view.
Right. It's a good alternative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with that.
Is it one that's considered?
I mean, we're all in the process right now.
Okay.
You know, I think it's all in the process.
So when do you think this process will be completed and final decisions will be made?
You know, I asked Trent Prawl, the traffic engineer, that question last time we had a meeting, and you know, and he says that they're still collecting data. It would be they hope to have enough. They want to get through the winter to see how things go with snow removal and things like that, and just getting more overall kind of experience among the different seasons. And so they're thinking that it would at least go until spring. So that's where we are for now.
But who's, you know, I know they're collecting data, but when this was another thing that was a comment of Dennis Simpson and actually Cody too, is what has tended to happen in the past is, so it's not necessarily how it will happen in the future, is that the city manager and the city staff come up with an idea, say, okay, here's all the information, here's all the data, you vote it up or down. And there's not room for, I like this part, could you get me more stuff on this, you know, doing it more in
systematic order.
Yeah. And taking little chunks and saying, okay, yeah, that part looks good, and we've had our chance to have feedback on that part. Do you feel like that's happened in this process, or is that part of the reason you're seeing the divisiveness?
So going back over 4 years, I've been on council. This is one of the first things you talked about when you got on council. You know, was coming from the Downtown Development Authority. We had the 4th and 5th Street plans, and we looked at them for about 2 years.
Were they different than what we see?
Yeah, because initially the idea was to move them both to be 2 directions. Because the main goal was to slow down traffic and make it safer for walkers and bikers. And so initially the plan was to do that. And then based on some studies and other things, they decided that it was equally good to keep them as they are for that purpose or to make them go bi-directional. And so the council decided to keep them the way they are, but again, use other techniques to slow things down.
I'm still having a hard time processing that. I can understand giving bikes a little extra lane. I can understand that. I just can't understand having as much as you have given them and the way you have done it. It just seems cockeyed to me, if you will. And the pedestrians, I've never seen any problem with pedestrians walking at all, ever. They went with stoplights. They went with the way they're supposed to. You know, you wait for the walk sign, you go, type thing. So I've never seen any issues with pedestrians at all. So that's the thing that's puzzling me.
You know, I think one thing that Main Street does really well right now is it allows for outdoor seating. Lots of people are eating outside now. That wouldn't have been possible at all prior to this, right? Prior
for Main Street, yes, but not 4th and 5th. I mean, that's where you're making the changes.
Not
right
on
now.
the main street.
Again, kind of that main vision of having a place where the passageways of downtown streets, sidewalks, are all going to be kind of thematically similar and allow for similar activities like eating outside on 4th and 5th Street. It would be a nice thing to do. Like when they did Operation Uplift on 7th Street, you know, before that happened, you couldn't eat outside in front of the Blue Moon or Rocky Mountain Roasters, right? But now you can, because they said we're going to have to near the streets a little bit more and make more room for other activities.
But that's pedestrian. Now then, if you add an extra long or extra wide bike lane, that's going to cut 7th Street way down, you know, and that I envision happening down the road if we get 4th and 5th in.
Well, and they've already had that.
They've
on
already
Gage,
had the
JJ.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's something that I don't support.
Okay.
The 7th Street changes. I mean, what I've said from the get-go is this has been very hard in our community. It's been raised people's hackles quite a bit. Lots of very strong, I think, often appropriate feedback. And so,
okay, sorry.
Please.
I'm sorry.
And so I would love to have us change things much more slowly, if at all, for 7th Street. You know, I think a couple of things I would love to see do. One is, like I said, with the Operation foresight, they did it all in a year. Once they got the plan in place, the construction took a year. Right now, the budget for capital says there's not anything to make these changes permanent for 7 more years, which would mean we would have the same white pickets and painted surfaces for 7 years. What I think is just a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would want us to, once we get a plan, get some consensus, we move ahead within a year to make it permanent, and then give that several years before you do anything on 7th Street at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a more reasonable approach.
Mm-hmm.
We might disagree as to the final plan, but the idea of having 4th Street be just white pickets and painted surfaces is not a good idea regardless.
Okay.
And where I was going, I'm sorry to interrupt you
No
before. What my question was going to be is, why do you think it caused so much divisiveness? What do you think was the root cause of the divisiveness?
2 things, I think. One is I think the city did a poor job of communicating about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think partially that was with our city manager leaving, our communications manager leaving, and so there wasn't like as much the usual thing they would do for that. Most downtown businesses were involved in some process along the way. Definitely DDA was involved, and we had 4 years of meetings with lots of public input, but they didn't do anything like walking tours and big signs in a month beforehand. And so when it came on as a surprise to people.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that we are just very particular about our streets. Think about North Avenue, changing it to University Boulevard. As the Chamber of Commerce and CMU saying, let's change this to this. That got 6,000 responses to the public input.
Mm-hmm.
Same people painting their car windows, making shirts, Facebook pages.
Mm-hmm.
A much more big uproar than this has been. And that's about changing the name of the street. We are a city that likes our streets the way they are. And that people don't want to see them change. Even the name of the street has been controversial. And so I think that's kind of all part and parcel with that.
Okay, I'll just jump on that.
Yeah.
Why do you think they didn't want to change the street signs? I know why there was a lot of controversy about that was the cost of making all of those changes when they thought it wasn't necessary.
Right.
I mean, what was wrong with North Avenue? I think that was the bottom line of that's just not something that needs to be done. It doesn't
And I still have
improve
an issue
anything.
with North Avenue, but we'll save
Yeah.
that for another.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's
Trying
totally
to get an SUV
different.
through some of those.
Yeah. But I think you're right, and it goes back to our question of, because another survey question that we asked is, did the public have enough notice, and 2, enough input? And look, I know that I don't know. We had almost 90% say, I didn't even know it was happening. And this is an area where I think always you get more consensus if people understand this is what we're thinking about, and this is where you can get involved, but where it's going out is not getting everybody. Like if you say, well, we have a communications director and it's in the Daily Sentinel, their readership is pretty limited, and especially the more they go online. Again, picking out the older community, like my neighbor over here gets the Daily Sentinel twice a week. She pays for it every day, but she will not go on the internet to read it. She goes, nope.
Not my thing.
Not my thing. I'm not internet. And a lot of people, you say, but you could do this, and just all you have to do is touch it, it'll be fine.
Right.
But they don't.
You're doing your editing for your videos, and you definitely bought into this as that technology is part of your life.
Yeah, you have to. You get left behind. But so I'm just saying, I don't think that it is well enough. It's not hitting different. It's only hitting one segment.
I don't disagree with you on that at all.
And how could we make that different?
I mean, like I said before, I think a great idea would be to actually have like walking tours with the city staff, signs going up like 2 months in advance. Here's the vision for what we're going to do. Please give us feedback now before we even start it. There was a process done. It was pretty intensive, but only in a smaller group of people, which is insufficient.
It was definitely insufficient.
Yeah.
We went to a couple of those open houses when they were starting this sustainability and adaptation plan, and it was very poorly attended, number one. Number two, it was during hours that a lot of people couldn't attend that would have a major input on it. So, it was really kind of a poor plan.
Well, and Scott, one thing that I have to give him credit for, when they were doing the 29 road, and on our podcast we were talking about it, and he was totally against it, and Cody's totally for it. Right. And we said, well, why don't you go out, as a city councilman, go out to different venues and present your side.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, yeah, like, well, where would you say? And I said, schools, and, just have it there,
Right.
let people know that it's going to be there and they can attend multiple different places
Mm-hmm.
instead of just one. And, we're going to do it at Farmers Market, and we're going to have a pop-up, and we're going to, people that come by and say hi, they know about it.
Yeah.
You have to do it many, many different places, like
Agreed.
you've suggested.
Agreed.
But he took it upon himself
Mm-hmm.
to say, this is something I really don't like, so I'm going to go out and make
Yeah.
the arrangements to do that, so people know.
Scott was a great campaigner against the
Yes, he was.
He was.
Just like I was a great proponent for a couple things you've done. We passed the 99-year lease program for affordable housing,
Uh-huh.
and I was the one out front of that with Cody. Cody and I kind of co-chaired that committee. Well, we weren't co-chairs. That was Diane Schwenke and Bernie Busher, but we were the council members involved. And
Right.
and I was really involved with the rec center. That was very important to me. And so we're going to, anyone who would listen to us, we're going to talk to them about it.
Good. And we just need that on more things that have a lot of impact to people.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly. Now then, speaking of impact, we'll switch gears.
Yeah.
The homeless situation.
Yeah.
And the setup that you have on
The resource
Third-
center?
Yeah, exactly. How do you perceive that as going?
Not very well, I'll say. It's so kind of bigger picture. This is an issue that's been roiling cities across the country, and about every year there's a new city that has figured it out, and they kind of become the darling city of we're doing this first and this second, and we should do what we're doing. And they're always the darling city for about a year, and then pretty soon everything they're doing is not enough. And so we're a community that's in the middle of that right now, and so it's something that's has so much tension involved, and there's no easy answers that that I think we're trying to almost do it not blindly, but doing our best efforts, using our best science as we can, but there's not an easy answer here. And so I think I support the concept of having a resource center. Like I've worked at the Catholic Outreach Day Center for about 20 years. I go there on Fridays. I used to be there twice a week, and I go down Fridays only, and actually it's my staff that go there more than I do now because I'm supervising them in that role.
Right.
But I think they've been doing a great job with that.
Yes,
overall.
they have.
I'm a big believer in Catholic Outreach. I think having something a little bit bigger that would have different hours in Catholic Outreach, theirs are very limited. It's only from like 8 till 11 most days, Monday through Friday. So having something that's beyond that would be helpful. But having it be close to Main Street hasn't been successful for sure.
Well, how much do you think the low barrier has made an impact on? Because I know we had Bev Lampley on before she passed, and she was just so neat about saying we need them to come in. So we're not just helping them stay housed for a month. We're helping them make different choices or develop a financial plan so that this doesn't happen to them again.
Lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not a supporter of having it be super low barrier. I think there should be. So right now we're talking about like having like someone at the front gate. If people would check in, we have to go through the kind of a full kind of a intake process before they get in. Having like a 1-2 strikes and you're out type of process like they do at the day center where you could be kicked out for a week. You look at other programs around the country where they actually say before you can use our services, come here for a week, educational experiences, kind of learn about here's the culture we're creating, here's the services we offer, here's how people will come successfully, they do this. Those who don't work out very well here, they're going to be doing this. And having it be a much different experience.
Oh, that's a neat concept.
Yeah, that's a little bit different than what we have now, of course.
Agreed.
So there is an issue with it being downtown where it's at. And I have understood via grapevine, haven't really heard anything other official, that that needs to be moved. And if so, if that's the case, where are you thinking?
So what we said at our last meeting was that we would move it by the end of April, or spring, we said, probably. But I think we're thinking April. Because right now, it's leased to Homeward Bound until next April 2026. And so we're saying we're going to move it a year before that.
Okay.
We have tasked city staff with going out, and they've probably visited 20 different sites already with their realtor. I've seen a couple of the ones that they were looking at, and none of them were quite right yet. It's pretty tricky. Like we want to have them far from a school, far from a tourist attraction, far from like downtown businesses. So probably more of an industrial type area, but would still be accessible to public transit. Other resources that would be used by the unhoused would be helpful. But we haven't found that spot yet. And so it's still unknown.
Okay, all right. That at least will quell the gossip for now. Everybody's saying, of course, not in my backyard. You know how that goes.
Right.
And so I'm sure that you'll get a lot of static for anything that you put up.
Yeah.
Unless it's way far away, in which case we'd have to make different arrangements for transportation and that kind of thing.
Well, one thing that Jody from the Day Center says is she thinks this is largely a transportation issue for where it is, why it is there. If you could put it somewhere else and have more transportation for people to come into town and other little places, is that a more reasonable financial solution to just have like more shuttle buses and things like that, so people could get where they need to go without having to live where they need to be at that moment.
Well, I know that Bill Wade had said originally when we had him on that the idea behind that resource center was that they would have just the set hours, and then people would take them to the shelters. They would have transportation to the different shelters if they didn't have a home, or they would have a way to get.
Which I think is largely happening. There's a shelter in the evenings between the resource center and the North Avenue shelter.
Okay, but still, there's several places that are having problems.
Right.
It's the after hours and the fear,
and them camping outside of the perimeter so that they're there first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
So issues there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we will do better than this. It's meeting a need, but it's not meeting the needs of the community broadly.
Right.
And so
The money seems to be an issue too. It's getting quite expensive to keep these things up, and
heating and cooling has been the biggest expense.
Yeah. And we kind of could see that when you look at, you've got a great big plastic building. It's going to be hard to heat. And we were there before it opened, and Bill said they were spending $4,000 a week heating it, before they got the gas lines in and stuff.
Yeah.
Just to try to keep it warm enough to.
It's lower than that now for sure, but it's more than we'd like.
Yeah.
I was there yesterday. We do like a Saturday afternoon food opportunity for people, and so we were serving food, and they had like probably 80 people coming for that. And it was warm and it was comfortable overall.
Didn't have to keep wearing your coat.
It was a great day yesterday too. That was the thing. I was out on the golf course, so it was a great day.
And far better than Whitman Park, for people who are using the park. Because they're actually a place to go and to be warm and to receive services. One thing we're looking at right now that's actually already happening is we're trying to split up the management of it a little bit more, because I think it's too much for just Homeward Bound to do by themselves. And so United Way is taking over the part of service provision and like the volunteers and so what's the actual program that's offered in the resource center. The Homeward Bound will still run the building, focus on safety, focus on cleanliness, but not be in charge of like the foot checks, the resource distribution, the meals, getting nurses and therapists in there also. So it's going to be more of a robust offering beyond just what we have right now.
So what is the cost for the city now?
Yeah.
As it's up and running, what is that cost?
It'll be between about $100,000 and $200,000 a year.
Okay.
So not a small amount, but not a huge amount also.
Right.
I think if we're going to either rent or buy a new place with brick and mortar, not a tent, purchasing will have some money. I think the prices I saw were in about $500,000 to $1 million price range to purchase. Renting would be far cheaper than that, and will allow us more flexibility as to where it's going to be.
So you're more or less, I guess maybe I don't want to put words into your mouth, but what I heard was you were more or less looking at industrial areas, which would be out by I-70 or down south of South Street.
Or 23. I heard 23 Road out where there's more industry.
Yeah,
that way.
Yeah, I think those would be kind of the things that are what's the word? Not coding, but zoned.
Zoned. Okay, yeah.
Coding, zoned,
same difference. Yeah.
So on that too, what I'm hearing you say, just purchasing or leasing a building that would be very similar to the day center, only with different hours. Is that what you're saying, or am I misinterpreting what you're saying?
It would have some So the big vision is to expand the services that are being offered there, right? And so
Right.
it would ideally have.
What services do you think need to be offered, and how much, and how do you decide we've got enough people? You don't want to build it so they will come. You
Right.
want to help them so they don't need to be coming,
Yeah.
or not be transporting people from other locations. Like if we have homeless people from Denver that have moved here because they didn't have the resources available to them
Yeah.
because of other reasons, so they came over here. So how do you make sure that what we're doing is actually just helping people to be able to move on?
Thank you. That's exactly right. I think about one of those things is housing, right? We should have a full spectrum of housing options. So some people choose to live down by the river, and right now that's their right to do that. It's not good for the river. It's not good for the community, and that's where they're going right now, or up in the North Desert. And so that's kind of like in my mind, that's a failure of our system, that people are living by the river.
Okay.
And so having them, go from that to maybe a shelter, to maybe like interim housing, to affordable housing, towards eventually getting their own market rate housing. That would be the goal. To make that happen, people need to have educational support. They need to have health support, especially mental health and addiction type services. That's my career. That's what I do.
Right.
I think they have to have, access to the community resources that already exist. So whether that is how can they get like job support. So I would love to have Mesa County Workforce have like a satellite office out there. They should have access to computers so they can actually apply for jobs and respond to emails, and so it's less of like a casual hangout spot and more like a resource hub, like the name is already called. What are your thoughts about that?
What, we talked about that, or what?
What are your thoughts about?
Oh, what are my thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm curious about your.
Well, I think that we do a lot of that already, is what I think. I know that Catholic Outreach, I know when Bev was on, she said they have over 600 volunteers, and we went to Catholic Outreach, but we didn't go there. We went to the other building where they feed. Yeah. I was so impressed.
It's a great service.
I was so impressed with what those people do. And I know the Workforce Center, I know that they are engaged in all those things, but you just don't have the money to be able to do that. The county doesn't have the money to move people down to there, and they have people all the time that are unhoused that go out there, but oftentimes they're not there in the right state of mind. There's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of, it's just they're combative instead of seeing it as you are trying to help me. One of my favorite things of all time was years ago in the library when I think you find this in counseling, I can't counsel somebody that doesn't want to change. People want things to change, but they don't want to change.
It's often true.
And so I don't know that if I say you have to do this, and I just keep presenting, because I did say that to some friends of mine that were psychologists, and I said, I just thought if we could just get them there and they would hear it, that they would see the need. And they go, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I just haven't ever heard that before.
So
and
you
I'm
look
not
at
sure that's true.
Like court mandated therapy for people who have had DUIs.
Right.
It's effective. It's not as effective as someone who's saying, I'm choosing to be here because I want to change my life. I'm at rock bottom. I want to do better.
Right.
But the outcomes are actually quite good for people who go into DUI counseling. Even though it's court-ordered by a judge, you have to be here for twice a week for the next year. They tend to have far better outcomes than those who don't do that.
So can we
that.
put that accountability in with the people that are homeless and say, you can have these services. We want you. We want to provide those services. However, your choices are, if you're choosing to continue on ways that are destructive to the community and you're hurting downtown businesses, those aren't going to be provided to you, or there's going to be some punishment.
No consequences.
Because
where is that consequence?
the consequence would maybe that you can't be here. You just can't be here.
You can't live in our city? Is that what you're saying?
Maybe.
That's not American.
Well, if you lost your job, and you couldn't afford to be here anymore, would you go somewhere else, or would you stay here and say, this is where I deserve to live because I want to.
Yeah.
So
And
provide
so
for me.
you have to provide for
Me
me.
personally, I would not do that.
No.
But I do think that again, America or the Bill of Rights would say that you can hang out where you want to hang out. And it's not that the solution is not to put them in jail. Like the county's not putting people in
I'm
jail.
not putting you in jail because of nothing. I'm
Right.
putting you in jail because maybe you were fighting,
Right.
which we don't
That's
want.
a good reason to go to jail.
You were tearing up, you
Play
stole.
by the rules. Play
Yeah.
by the rules.
Play by the rules.
What would you suggest if, because you can't just, if I'm in a school
Mhm.
and I'm teaching,
Right.
you have to have some classroom discipline
Absolutely.
or nobody learns.
Right.
So you have to have a consequence.
Yeah.
Or say, what, you don't want to learn, so what am I going to do with you?
Yeah.
What do you suggest?
Well, I think it's a tricky comparison to make.
Well,
in that
okay.
When we say you're going to go to jail, that is a huge burden for our community,
Right.
for our taxpayers,
Right.
and so the city and the county are both saying we're not in the jailing business for homeless people unless they are breaking laws, causing fights, doing other things, and if so, they're going to be prosecuted for that. And I think our city's taking some heat right now because we're putting people into jail more than they would like actually. These are hard questions to answer.
Okay, but what's your solution? Because if you have chaos, if you have
Yeah.
no consequence, right?
Right.
So what is your solution if you have people that don't want to follow a societal rule and don't want to contribute to the society? I'm asking you.
Uh-huh.
What do you do with them?
I think what we do best right now is we try to engage them. And so, like, I've been on ride-alongs with the police where, there's people who are in their RVs camped behind Walmart. And so Walmart says, this guy's been here for 2 days, can you please move him along? And so they go down there, they talk with them, they give them resources, they talk about, here's where
Right.
you can probably park your RV, you can't be here.
Right.
And they kind of move them along and try to engage them in the system. And that's a good thing. I like how we have like a co-responder model now in our community where when the police and the sheriff go out, they go off with the therapist. And so they can provide services right there on the spot. It's not just handcuffing them and taking them to jail. It's let's talk to the situation right now and see if we can get some more support for this. People will lose their rights to do things, right? They'll lose their driver's license because they've been driving drunk, or they don't pay their fines. And so there are other consequences for people. But having one go-to consequence for someone who is without housing, we haven't found that yet. No community's found that yet. Not the county, not the city. It's a big problem.
I agree. So, and it's been almost an hour. Is that what you're doing?
That's what I'm doing.
yeah. Well, I don't have the solution. Obviously, I don't want people to be jailed either. But I don't want to continue to attract people that don't want to work and don't want to contribute.
And support habits.
And support habits, because oftentimes people do have to reach, if you have an addictive personality or you have an addictive behavior, what we learned in sociology is people or society doesn't change until there's an absolute need to change. They don't usually just change and say, oh, let's do something different.
It's kind of the core belief of AA, right? Hit rock bottom and then...
Yeah.
And so I do think that having far more access to services for people who have addictions would be a nice core place to start.
Right. Well, because that is a cause of a lot of behaviors.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
And depression and schizophrenia and lots of,
Right.
in my work, I would say 70% of people I want to talk with on a day-to-day basis have either a mental health issue, a severe and persistent mental illness, or an addiction problem.
I would see that too.
Yeah.
Just turning this
Exactly.
So we're not saying your ideas are bad. We're just saying, we got to weigh them, see what they are. So is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't asked that you thought, I really wanted to say this while I was here?
I think overall our city works well. And I look at my experience on council. I enjoy serving with people who are far to my left and people who are far to my right. And I think that percentage has changed over the years. Which has been unsettling to some people. But I will always try and work with both sides of the issue. That's why I'm here today. That's why I meet with Cody. That's why I meet with Dennis.
Yeah.
I think we need to make sure that we are finding solutions that meet the needs of most people in the community.
It's exactly how we feel. That's why we started this podcast.
Yeah.
Was to get out everybody's side so we can all make an informed judgment.
Right.
Yeah.
So people know what that person thinks and says.
Exactly.
Well, you've been watching Mesa County Compass. This is the facts as we see them, the truth as we know it. You decide.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Randall, for
Thank you.
joining us.
Appreciate that.
Do appreciate